was not followed, because that referendum was successful. So also, in 2003, the Drinking Water Protection Act became law, and that was as a result of Walkerton. There was, some standards that were put in to protect health, right? So Interior Health had the legislative responsibility to ensure that the purveyor of water systems, so that's the Greater Vernon Water Utility, complied with this Drinking Water Protection Act. And that has some profound repercussions on our water utility here. I won't go into great detail about that. So in 2004, an addendum was produced to that 2002 Master Water Plan that made that recommendation of the separation, right? It resulted in this present mixed water system. So instead of separating the pipes, they decided to put the Duto Creek Water Treatment Plant where it is now, and just treat all the water and not separate the agricultural water from the domestic water. This was done in part because grants were available for water treatment plants and not for pipe separation. So in hindsight, it was a poor decision. But now, but how it happened, it's never been questioned or resolved. Because this all happened in 2010. I remember I was elected in 2008, I guess it was, November 2008. And as a new politician at the time, I don't think I was aware of what was going on, but all of a sudden the construction started on the Duto Creek Water Treatment Plant. They had actually taken the vote just before the new people came in. So that November of 2008, when the outgoing politicians were leaving and the new ones were going to be sworn in December the 1st, that decision was made. So at the cost of $29.3 million, we built the Duto Creek Water Treatment Plant. It came into operation in fall 2010. It uses dissolved air flotation treatment to improve the aesthetics of the Duto source and chlorination to protect human health from waterborne disease. This is a picture of Arnold Badke, who was the engineer at the time at the Regional District of the North Okanagan when we were cutting the ribbon at Duto, October the 30th, 2010. So what happened? After the first year of operation, when we finally got some numbers, and it took quite a bit of digging, particularly on Councillor Kiss's part to get the information, we discovered that 96% of the water treated at Duto was used for irrigation. From the examination of the water usage data for 2011 and 12, the first full year, it was found that in the summer, on a peak day, of the 160 million liters being treated, it was estimated that only 6 million liters were for domestic use. The rest, 154 million liters, were sprayed on fields for irrigation. And it's more expensive to treat that water, because that water, you remember when I talked about the geology, it's not filtered through gravels, it's just swamp water. It's actually, they're very tannin-rich lakes. And so it costs $1.7 million per year to operate the plant. And you have to use this aluminum, this alum, that dissolved air flotation happens with alum that the particles cling to, and then they sweep it off. I don't know if any of you have been on that tour of Duto, but it's expensive to run. It's a beautiful plant. The engineering is superb, but it's expensive. So it makes Duto water 4 times as expensive to treat as Cal Lake water in winter, and 1.4 times as expensive in the summer. And the reason the difference in the winter and the summer has to do with volume of water treated. So the plant location in the rural area, very far from the dense domestic population, and requires more pipe to separate irrigation water from domestic drinking water. So we also spent, on top of the $29.5 million, we spent $38 million on separating agricultural and irrigation pipes for domestic and drinking, from the domestic drinking water pipes from the agricultural pipes. It was necessary to do this just to get the peak demand down, because the actual peak demand was 250 megaliters per day, and the plant capacity it had been built to was 160. So the effect on water rates. So this is just in my own experience. experience. In the 3 years since the operation of the Duto plant, my rates have gone up by 25%. So from an average of $1.90 per cubic meter in 2011 to $2.39 in 2013. Now, I live in a house on a 75 by 100 foot lot. You know, I have a small yard with a little bit of grass. So it's not, and the cost itself, I pay maybe $500 a year in water. So it isn't the absolute cost. And if it was just about the cost, I wouldn't be standing here giving you this presentation. To me, there are some other much more critical things. So what they did say in those technical memorandum that were done for the Master Water Plan was that the water rates have more than doubled since 2002. So the rates will continue to rise. If we borrow $70 million as planned and add $4 to $5 million of debt repayment to the water rates, next year our rates will go up again by at least 25%. This is unsustainable, particularly on large lots. So what other things have, worried me other than just this rising cost of water? They have to do with the sustainability of the whole plan, the idea of treating water and putting it on agricultural fields. The 57% of Coldstream is in the ALR, right? So according to the Ministry of Agriculture, 53% of the parcels in the ALR in Coldstream don't have farm status. So that's contrary to popular rumor. Most of these properties don't get agricultural water rates. And so these properties may have allocation. So when the original water utility was formed, the farmers actually got their water allocation. They paid $6,000 per unit and got water allocation. But if now by policy, Greater Vernon Water, if you don't have farm status and water allocation, then you cannot get agricultural rates. And the agricultural rates are far cheaper than the domestic rates. And the reason for this is when the water utility came together, it was agriculture that had the water licenses. And that was the deal. They said, we will give you our water licenses, but you will ensure that our rates will stay competitive. And that is actually a good thing. It's a good thing for everyone, because if our agriculture doesn't stay competitive, then we would lose it. We couldn't grow things. And it's like killing the goose that laid the golden egg. People come here because of the climate and because of the agriculture. They like, the fruits and the peaches and the beaches, right? So, but our agricultural future is fragile. I sat on the Agricultural Advisory Committee in Coldstream, and this was a shock to me because we were trying to limit the subdivision, the future subdivision of parcels in the ALR. And one of the things that we found was that 77% of the parcels in the ALR in Coldstream were already smaller than 4 hectares in size. So what's this got to do with anything? So 50% of the ALR in Coldstream doesn't have farm status. The GVWU policy would make it virtually impossible to get agricultural allocation if raw water is not available. So if you haven't split the pipes, then there's no raw water. So the water in the pipes is being treated. It's very expensive. The policies make it difficult. Now you can change policies, but the problem is the economics of it. Somebody has to pay. So the present plan will be particularly hard on electoral area B and C, where parcelization has already made twinning so expensive that it's not in the plan. It's not in this plan that we've chosen. And so this is the status of the separated irrigation as of 2013. The area in purpley pink is the area that will have future separation, so will have non-potable. But everywhere else, so you see Vernon, Area C, that whole eastern side of Swan Lake, will not have non-potable lines. So So they will be using treated water on their agricultural fields. They may charge them less, but still they'll be. And then even the areas that do get the twin non-potable lines, somebody has to pay for the new pipes, and that amortized cost will be put on the domestic customers. So by building the Duto plant where it is, and by choosing to treat most of the agricultural water, we're putting the future of agriculture at risk. The new master water plan sees us building a $30 million filtration plant at Duto. So the first part of this plan is to build on top of this. So you had the 160 megaliter treatment plant. Now they're sizing it down to 110 megaliters per day filtration plant by 2017. Despite expensive twinning, most of the filtered water will still be used for irrigation only. So if you say 6 megaliters per day is domestic, and you're treating 110 megaliters, then 104 megaliters are still going to go on fields. So you're going to take this pristine filtered water and put it on your fields. And the fields would prefer the yucky Duto water from before. And so when I argued this with some of the politicians, because this, keep in mind that this is the presentation that I was giving to the politicians. I modified it slightly for us, but they said to me, well, that's not the first thing. We don't have to do that. That doesn't have to be the first thing that we do. But that is what's in the plan. What's in the plan says, that we're at the Duto Stage 2 filtration is this blue, and in 2014 we're doing the planning, design for phase 1, and then in 2016 we're construction. So in conclusion, Kalamata Lake and Okanagan Lake should be the main source of domestic drinking water because they are naturally filtered, deep, good quality reservoirs. We should work at better source water protection, and the Duto source should remain mostly for irrigation and raw water backup for Kalamata Lake. Why are we not prepared, and this is the question I was asking the politicians, to do a peer review of the 2012 Master Water Plan? There have been new interpretations on water license transfers, change of point of diversion, and I'm not going to explain all that, but that may influence the economics of some of the other options, because there was other options. So the future steps that I recommended were that we should have a master water plan that everyone agrees to. So we should review the master water plan decision. Building a huge capacity filtration plant at Duto was the wrong first step. And then I said we should appeal the IHA condition that requires filtration to all domestic customers, even where it makes no economic sense. The standard makes sense in urban areas where you have density of population, but it doesn't make sense in rural areas. We should put all future capital works in debt repayment for the pipes and plants on taxation, not on water rates. This would stabilize the water rates. Users can pay the operational costs only. All residential benefits are going to be available with water. And the reason I was saying that to the politicians is for 6 years while I've been on council, and I've watched the meetings at GVW because I wasn't always allowed at the table. There was talk about putting the pipes and the plants on taxation, the capital costs, but it isn't possible with the present governance structure that we have because a lot of areas C and B, well, number one is they're not incorporated, so you cannot necessarily legally do the taxing. The taxing is done through the province, and it would just cause headaches. So this is. They've always dodged this question, but we almost need a reorganization of our governance structure for this to be possible. And there has to be political will. And so the other thing we should do is we should lobby the provincial government for grants to help with the water treatment plant as well as these pipe separation projects. I maintain that having the agricultural potential of this valley to grow fruit trees and to do all those things is a benefit to all of British Columbia. Like you saw that very little of British Columbia actually is good ALR land. Very little of British Columbia has the climate that we have and can grow the things that we can grow So, you know, what this plan says for me is you're killing the 100-year irrigation history. So all the good works that was done with irrigation, you've taken over those irrigation licenses, you've made them domestic, and you're going to kill that potential. It will happen slowly, but if we go in that direction, that's what I see happening. So the consequences are too dire, and we should not make another mistake. And that's the end.
Thank you, Maria. Excellent.
Thank you, Steve.
While Jill is getting that ready, I had a public service announcement I forgot to make at the beginning, and that is that the Coldstream Rate Payers Association is hosting an all-candidates gathering 2 evenings from tonight on Thursday, November 6th, at the Women's Institute Hall, which is right close to the